Yeah, well, that's not a theory about the.
Well, yeah, that's kind of a detraction of the story itself.
That's kind of the end of at least my research, at least because the only information we have on this thing is from Witkowski, and then through Nick Cook, Witkowski. I don't see that Nick Cook has been able to uncover any more about the bell.
Yeah,
about the bell. He's conjectured about it's credible. Hans Kammler wouldn't have access to the bell. So where did the bell go? Is it like buried somewhere still in Czechoslovakia? Is it in America? Is it in a South American country? Well, I think it never existed, personally.
Devin, what are your thoughts?
I think that Joe has been fairly persuasive in that the evidence is strong that perhaps it never existed. But you guys know me, so I'm going to say you could look back in time with it, even though I think that's useless technology.
Mm-hmm.
I personally, though I don't get it, I am swayed by the amount of science that is written about the bell.
Mm-hmm.
I also don't know that it really existed, but people have theorized a lot of stuff, and it seems to have some credible science behind it, which is pretty interesting. And I also like the time thing, but I have also seen that it was a time machine. And I kind of like that theory.
Yeah.
And we're not. I don't want to go into it a whole lot here. But have you heard the theory that time is one giant loaf of bread and every moment is a slice?
Yeah.
That time is a circle.
No, that it's a loaf of bread, and that you can if you go back, you're going back to the previous slice.
Yeah.
If you look it up and you actually, I think if you just Google time is a loaf of bread or a slice of bread, you can find this theory because it's really kind
I've
of
heard about
but
this
simple
theory,
and interesting.
Yeah.
And I like that idea. I think it's kind of slick. I also don't think the thing is real.
No.
Time is just an endless circle.
Time is a piece of toast.
No,
No.
I am making a listener call out. Name that reference. Time is an endless circle.
Time
Continue.
is a circle. Okay. There's another theory and actually it's credible, that time is actually doesn't actually really, well, it exists, but it's just a way for us to sort out reality.
This is another show.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
No. This will only take a sec.
Okay.
It's like time. Essentially, what happens, what's going on is that everything is happening all at once. What happened yesterday, what's happening right now, what's going to happen tomorrow, all happen at the same time. Time is just our way of
It's our mental construct of perceiving the world around us.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, this is another show.
Yeah. Okay.
We will do this on a
All right, we'll talk about this some other
promise.
time. Yeah. So anyway, the time machine. That's exciting, fun stuff. The thing about it is like the stuff that's been spun, like you're talking about. This some of the theories that have been spun about how it could have like been used to create uranium-233 and stuff like that. I've seen some very elaborate depictions of the internal setup of this thing and how it all worked.
Well, and you sent me something about how in 2001 somebody claimed to have recreated a scale version of the bell.
Yeah, exactly. And it's
it
like
exuded gravitational fields, or I don't remember what it was. But
yeah, and it's like it's interesting because again, Sporenberg was the only source of information for this thing. And Sporenberg did exist, but he's been dead since 1952. So he describes this thing and describes basically as a box, and says, well, it's capable of doing this. And then somebody in 2001, based on that, goes out and creates a replica of it. It's like, really? How did you manage to do that? I could see if you stumbled across some plans and you knew precisely what it was supposed to do and you had an idea of how it worked and everything, you could do that. But Sporenberg didn't have a clue how, if it really existed, he had no clue how it worked or even precisely what it did.
yeah.
I have a new theory.
Yeah, what's that?
The bell was actually a field shower.
That
You
works.
would get in it, and it would spiral water up and heat it up and just shower it down on you, and you'd have privacy.
Mm-hmm.
And they moved it around so that Hitler could.
It was a mobile shower. It was a mobile spa.
That
Yeah.
works. Yeah.
It was the mobile spa.
Yeah.
We just mistranslated the German. It's badly recorded.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's actually De Führer's Spa.
Yeah. I think that's my new theory.
Yeah. As long as
actually a spa.
we're talking about new theories, if you look at it, it actually almost looks like a space capsule. Like they, maybe they were looking at a space capsule. Maybe they were going to put a man in orbit.
They were going to replace the Liberty Bell.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was.
when they finally invaded America.
There it is.
That would have been actually a cool prank, you know. They sneak in, they sneak in, and one day Americans get up and there's this bell with a swastika on the side of it.
That's not
hanging in
cracked.
Philadelphia.
I think that's the
That would've
strongest
been-
theory yet.
Alrighty.
I think that's what they were. Yeah, they were totally gonna punk us. Okay, so that's about it. We've talked about this long enough. So if you want to learn more, we'll have some links up on our website, which is, as always, thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. And if you want to find us on iTunes, we're out there too. If you do find us, please stop to give us a comment and a rating. We would really appreciate that. You can also find us on Stitcher if you don't want to go through that whole iTunes thing. Also,
That whole
iTunes
I know,
thing.
it's so much work. And of course, you can find us and like us and friend us on Facebook. We are on Facebook. And send us an email at thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com. Well, that's about it. If you guys have any comments about us, we would totally love to get an email from you about the Nazi Bell.
And if you are the Nazi Bell, please send us an email.
Please.
We would love to
We
hear
would
from you,
love-
Nazi Bell.
Also, you know, I think we're going to have to do some deciphering because I don't know if the Nazi Bell has hands.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. He's got to tap. He's got to use the top of his face.
Yeah, we'll have to use Google
the
Translate.
Top of his face.
Yeah, if you're a Nazi war criminal who was involved in this, we would love to hear
We'd
from
love
you.
to hear from you.
Yeah,
if your skin was melted off by the radiation from the Nazi Bell, please.
Absolutely. So that's about it for this week. So ta-ta, everybody.
Talk to you next week, guys.
I'm pretty sure it would be.
No doubt.
Thinking sideways. Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to a holiday special episode of Thinking Sideways. I, of course, am Steve, as usual, joined by my two little elves.
Devin?
And Joe.
No, if anything, maybe all three of us are elves.
Yeah, we kind of might be. Because it's the holidays, we're going to talk about a holiday-themed mystery that you may not have realized was a mystery.
Yeah.
And that is the origin of the Nutcracker.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about not the little metal ones.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
actual
yeah.
decorative ones.
Yeah,
Those
the
are
ones that
I'm
look like
talking
little
The big
soldiers.
wooden ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And since I'm the first one up today, I'll go ahead and just give the brief bit of history supposed history that we have about them, and then we'll actually talk about my theory of where the Nutcracker came from.
Yeah,
Alrighty,
because we all have theories.
We always
We've all
have.
done our own research. and-
as usual.
Thinking about this since I was a kid.
Yeah. So officially, the story goes that in Germany, sometime in the 15th century, there was a Nutcracker challenge, which is strange, but it was won by a puppet maker who came up with what we now know to be the design of the decorative wooden Nutcracker. The lore around the design of it disagrees with itself in a couple of tellings, but in some, as we were just saying, it's got the lever on the back and the mouth closes to crack the nut. That's the official version. There's other versions that say that in actuality the nutcrackers were two pieces of wood that were strapped together, and I guess you stuck the nut in at the end where the strap was and used leverage to break it.
Actually, the original ones, you just sort of like wedge the nut into the mouth of it and then you smash it against something hard.
Well, that is also one
Yeah.
way to do it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they always looked like people. They were always designed to be a little human figure. And so then, of course, as time went on, they got a little more charming, and people had them around in the holidays. And what we don't really know is why. Why are they so popular at this time of year? And I have done the research, and I have what the actual reason is.
Really?
You ready to hear this?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I pieced this together from some really old manuscripts that have been coming out of Eastern Europe and as PDFs.
And they're on the internet now.
Then they're on the internet now.
Thank God for the internet.
Yes, indeed. So here's what happened is sometime in the 15th century, there was a plague that was roaming Europe, And it's a fun myth today, but it was a creature that
Not
was
so fun at the time.
no, not so
Yeah.
fun at the time, but it's a fun myth now. So these are considered a myth, but they were real, and that is the Wolpertinger. For those of you who aren't familiar with this little creature, they're small, they're furry, they travel close to the ground, and when they're scared, they fly away, though normally they don't have to.
They have duck wings.
Yeah, they have little duck-like wings on them, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, they're little furry creatures, but they have feathered duck wings on them, which is pretty cool.
They're about the size of a rabbit, and they have horns, which they'll use to defend themselves if they need to, though they don't normally need to because they're great at distraction, and they use their little squirrel-like tail to flip around and confuse a predator before they scurry away. So they're pretty quick little boogers.
Pretty well adapted.
Yeah, and the problem is they were, for a while, they were just a bit of a nuisance. But after time, because they reproduce so fast, they were actually...
Like rabbits.
Like rabbits. They were threatening all of the crops in Europe. They were devouring things. People were worried they were going to starve to death because there was no food.
Yeah, that happened a lot back in those days.
It kinda did.
Yeah, one bad crop and you were screwed.
Or one
like in a
really
famine.
vicious little,
Or that
little
too.
vermin guy, yeah.
Yeah. So, not knowing what to do about this infestation, a plea from the royalty was put out to all the learned men in the country to kind of come up with a solution to this.
Actually, not the country, the continent. Really.
The continent, yeah, really,
Yeah.
You're right. I did understate that a little bit. Well, two men came forward. Today, they're only known as Sir Chapman and Pastor Palin, but these men stepped forward with what they claimed was the solution. And their solution was to use a blend of chicken feathers and foie gras and to spread it around the entrances to their warrens. The thinking being that they would be unable to cross that barrier and therefore they would starve to death in their warrens and the problem would go away.
That makes a total sense.
No.
No?
No.
Well, not really.
Not
but
even
yeah.
a little.
Well, it turns out you're both right because it went horribly, horribly wrong. Because it turned out instead of trapping them in their burrows and starving them to death, it actually drove them into a frenzy. And these little guys became not only rabid, but they developed, courtesy of the foie gras, a taste for flesh.
Yeah, because they were vegetarians before that, right?
Yeah, and they were specifically now after liver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they wouldn't want to eat my liver.
Soon, entire villages were being destroyed as they tore through the townsfolk, literally with their horns. And there was no human organ that was spared from the destruction of these little boogers.
But especially the livers.
Yeah. Well, as you can imagine, this had to be stopped, and soon enough, a solution was found at an Oktoberfest. There were men who started, after consuming all of the beer that was in the kegs, started walking around wearing said brightly colored kegs. And turns out that the little guys couldn't use their horns to get through the keg to the liver, so nobody was hurt.
Yeah, the only problem is the only really entree to the keg was up to the bottom, and you know what that leads you past if you're one of those little guys.
Well, these were tall kegs.
Oh, they were. Okay.
Yeah, they were tall kegs, and you only have to wear it down there low so that the guy can't get you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they're low to the ground to start with, so that's where you're going to put your defenses.
Okay.
Think about it.
All right.
So here's what happened: is they started advancing on the Wolpertingers, and what they would do is they were shouting "Brau." As they were doing that, they were throwing large bread pretzels at them.
Oh, the kind with tons of salt on them?
Yeah. The things you usually have with beer.
And they got hypertension and they died of
No.
heart disease.
It turns out that these critters, believe it or not, decimated them, and they were able to clear the continent in a matter of hours of this pest.
As we all know, I mean, gluten intolerance just, it'll kill you in an hour.
Yeah,
less.
It's
sometimes.
Less, apparently.
It is really, it's
Yeah.
terrible.
I'm
It's a
glad
terrible thing.
glad I don't have it.
Yep. So this is how the Nutcrackers came about to be so popular. Is that the wooden armor and the shapes of the men's mouth when they were shouting "Brau"? That was
What were they doing?
shouting brow over and over.
Just like, brow.
Yeah,
That means-
exactly.
That means eat the pretzel.
Yeah. And so, believe it or not, this story, how this story disappeared, I don't know, but it was slowly covered up by the media at the time.
Well,
because they were busy covering, religious wars and whatnot, and the internet sucked.
Well, plus also this represented, you could say, wow, this is humanity's salvation, or you could say a great environmental crime was committed. Hello.
That is a good reason,
Yeah.
but either way, it was then to commemorate the next year. They realized they needed to commemorate these men who had saved the continent, and so they made these little wooden soldiers that were painted to match the kegs, and those in time evolved into more of a soldier-esque figure that didn't look like he was just a barrel, but looked like he was an actual person.
Yeah, and typically these were released in sets, so you'd have the Nutcracker with this little barrel-shaped thing and brightly painted, and there'd be a lot of little Wolfentingers that you would surround him with.
And
but
so
being smaller and more delicately carved, they got crushed and/or lost over the years.
Yeah, and,
So
and it
that,
turns out that the the Hefeweizen style Nutcracker guy wasn't nearly as popular, so we lost the yellow one to history. So there's a lot of stuff that disappeared on the sides with this.
Yeah.
So that is actually why we have the Nutcracker.
Really?
Yeah.
So Devin, what do you think? Are you in agreement with that?
I can see the word that she keeps mouthing over and over, and it's not a nice word. I'm glad she's not saying it out loud.
Nix.
Has something to do with cows.
Yeah.
Well, I should explain one bit, which is how I know all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should talk about that then, yeah.
So there was a documentary made. I gotta admit, I didn't actually find this from stuff that's been coming out on the internet only recently.
Yeah.
There was a movie made about 35 or 40 years ago.
Almost 40.
Almost 40
Actually,
years
more
ago.
than 40.
And it was a great documentary. It was directed by Terry Gilliam and Terry Jones, and it features a creature that is very similar and as deadly as the Wolfentinger.
Which I think is probably how you found out that that was even a thing, right?
Yeah, I put two and two together because if you look out there, the clues are there, and you just need to know where to look.
Yeah.
Come on, sheeple.
I know. I saw a documentary actually about the making of this documentary. They originally had big plans for making the rabbit wear a wig and some fake wings and some antlers and stuff like that. And the rabbit really didn't take to it.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a low budget movie, so they really couldn't afford to take a couple of months off and train the rabbit. So
Which is a shame, but
so they went with the white bunny.
budgets are what budgets are.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
Well, I think that's a nice story,
Aw.
Steve.
You think it's
but
a fairy tale, don't you?
I do. I think it's kind of a fairy tale because I also have seen a documentary about Nutcrackers, so I actually have the in on how this actually went down.
All right.
And,
School me.
as my favorite stories often do, this one starts with a princess in a far-off land.
Oh, I thought it was supposed to start with bullet points.
Nope. So there was this princess in a faraway land. Calm down, it's fine. And she was tricked by this woman who was called Madame Mousquetaire. And you're laughing, but that's the translation. I'm sorry, this is a Russian story. This Nutcrackers actually came from Russia, not Germany. I don't know if you guys know that or not, but it's true.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So anyway, so in Russia there was this princess, and she was Madame Mousquetaire was often also called the Mouse Queen, so we'll just call her the Mouse Queen for now.
Can we just call her Minnie?
No, we're gonna call her Mouse Queen. There was one day where the Mouse Queen tricked this princess into allowing her and her children, the queen, not the princess, to eat up a bunch of lard that was being reserved actually to go into the sausages for the princess's father, the king's dinner that night.
Okay.
So obviously the king was mad about this, right? Nodding.
The king noticed the lard was missing. from
Yeah,
the
well, because
recipe.
they couldn't make sausage. No, they couldn't even.
He noticed
make
the sausage wasn't
He noticed
meal.
the sausage was missing, and
You
so
can't make sausage without lard?
Apparently.
yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And the queen, not the Mouse Queen, the princess's mom,
Yeah,
the
the
queen,
real queen.
was upset because she couldn't make the sausage for the king, and so everyone was mad at the princess. So the queen is upset that she can't make the sausage, and the princess is in kind of deep trouble for letting the Mouse Queen, or Madame Mousquetaire, eat the lard and her children. So the king commissioned a court inventor whose name was Drosselmeyer to create some traps for the Mouse Queen and her children, which worked.
Cruel.
Yeah,
I think we use those today.
we do. They're different, but we do. So what he created was kind of similar to Nutcrackers, but unfortunately it did get all the children, but it didn't get the Mouse Queen. And so the Mouse Queen, who was obviously like annoyed, upset, understandably upset, she swore that she would take revenge on the princess. So
So she